Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for the second installment in RTD's Aging Well webinar series. My name is Rachel Moran, and I'm a senior financial planner here at RTD. We created this series to address some of the challenges our clients may face as they themselves or their loved ones enter the later years of their life. Joining us today is Nancy Carman, an elder care coordinator at Fendrick & Morgan, a law firm specializing in elder care law. Nancy is a trained gerontologist and a certified geriatric care manager who has worked for over 30 years in the field of aging, including management of home care services and consulting in the senior housing industry. Nancy has served as a board member for the Delaware Valley chapter of the Alzheimer's Association and is co-editor and contributing author of the book, Recreating Neighborhoods for Successful Aging. She's a frequent speaker at state, national, and international conferences addressing topics related to successful aging. Nancy will be presenting on the topic of early planning and preparation, covering a broad range of issues we need to think about as we age. Please note that this presentation is educational in nature. We appreciate Nancy taking the time to share information pertaining to our Aging Well series. RTD and Fendrick Morgan are not affiliated in any way, formally or informally. Our sole purpose in offering this webinar is to provide a means to share information that we feel may be useful to you from other professionals and specialists. Feel free to type in questions you may have throughout the presentation and we'll address them at the end. And with that, I will pass things off to Nancy for today's presentation.
Thank you, Rachel. As Rachel said, today we're going to be talking about early planning and preparation in order to age well. I'm part of Fendrick Morgan, which is an elder law firm established in 2001, and we provide elder law, state and tax planning, state administration, special needs planning, guardianship, Medicaid planning and application, and I provide the elder care coordination part of the life care planning program. So I want to start today to talk a little bit about fast facts on aging. As you can see, life expectancy in the United States has increased dramatically. From the 1900s to 2015, it's gained about 31.7 years. We've gained that much. Actually, women can be expected now to live to be 81.1, and men can live to an average age of 76.3. We women still have the home court advantage here in terms of 4 more years than gentlemen, but they're catching up with us. The state with the highest life expectancy, surprise, surprise, is Hawaii. 78 years for men, 84.7 for women, with an average of 81.4. So we're all going to rush to live in Hawaii to live those longer, lovely lives. The longest living place on Earth is Nagano, Japan. It's about the size of Connecticut. Women live to be 87.2, men live to be 80.9 on average. And their lifestyle is one of high vegetable consumption. They take many walks, they walk together, and they postpone retirement. And it's interesting because I jokingly say that's what our mothers taught us. Eat your vegetables, go outside and play with the other kids and get along. So those are factors that all contribute to living a long, successful life. I love this cartoon, The Secret of Longevity. It says, "Oh, desert sage, I hear you're 500 years old. True. What's your secret for longevity? 2 words, don't die." So the realities of aging, age 65 and over, is that we have longer lifespans, and the baby boomers are the largest aging cohort in the United States. Those 65 and over will double by the year 2065. There were 37.2 million 65 and over in 2006. Expect in 49.2 million in 2016, about a 33% increase. The projections are huge. Projected to have 82.3 million 65 and over in 2040 and 98 million in 2065, which is almost double from 2016. Those 65 and over now are about 15.2%, and in 2040, 65 and over individuals will account for 21.7% of the U.S. population. In fact, what this says is the United States is going to look like what Florida looks like now. And more than 2/3 of those 65 and over will need long-term care services during their lifetime. And the summary of this is that the longer you live, the longer you can expect to live. This is a Time magazine that came out, and it talked about how we could live to be 142 years old. I think if I asked everybody here who was listening to this webinar whether they'd like to live to be 142, I'm not sure how many hands I would get on that one. The reality of aging past 100. Many of you may have heard centenarians, the term. Those are people aged 100 and over. In 2016, there were 81,896 centenarians, and that more than doubled between 1980 and 2016. There's a new term called super centenarians, and these are people aged 110 and over. It's been validated that there are actually 700 super centenarians in the United States, and in the history of the United States, and currently 75 to 100 in the United States. And there's a picture of Jean Calment. She actually lived to be 122, and she's from France. Must have been that good French wine. But what's interesting too is that 90% of all the centenarians that they've recorded live relatively independently till the end of their lives. And the super centenarians remain active and sharp most of their lives. So here we have, looking at the graphs of aging. If you look at 1960, you look at the largest cohort is down there between 0 and age 19. If you go over the 2060, you see that we call it the pig and the python, which are the baby boomers coming up through the age ranks. In 2060, you're going to have more females age 85 and over. So we are definitely a aging population. And the boomers are those born between 1946 and 1964. So in today's numbers, those of us who are age 54 to 72. And we also are an aging nation. For the first time in the United States history, older adults are projected to outnumber children by 2035. And that means that more older adults are going to need care. And there are fewer caregivers, i.e. family members, to provide that care. We're also looking at a tidal wave of memory loss, Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common form of dementia or memory impairment. So it's really an age-related disease, and it really affects people, for the most part, 85 and over. About 50% of those 85 and over are at risk. Every 65 seconds, someone in the United States is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. It's the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. Currently, there are 5.7 million Americans who have Alzheimer's disease, and it's projected that if we don't find a cure or a way to slow it down or preventative measures, in 2050, there are going to be 14 million older adults with Alzheimer's disease. It's also the costliest disease in the United States. It's estimated this year, 2018, that we're going to spend $277 billion, that's with a B, dollars on people with this disease. And that could escalate in 2050 to 1.1 trillion or more. So here's a cartoon that I like, Krabby Road. She says, I think I have a pretty good medical plan. My plan is to stay healthy. You know, as I shared before, at least 70% of the people 65 and over will need some kind of long-term care services and support. Women on average need about 3.7 years of care and support. Men need about 2.2 years of care and support. But a lot of elders live in that land of denial. They just say, you know, I'm going to live to be 100, I'm going to go to bed one night, have a heart attack, and then I'm going to be fully independent till then. That happens occasionally, but that's the exception rather than the rule. People, as they get older, many of them do need that care and support later on in life. So I want to talk about having the talk with mom and dad. A lot of families, you know, really struggle with this. And because families are far-flung, they may live out of the area, out of the state, or on a different coast, that many times they all come in for holidays, and that's when they start talking about, you know, mom doesn't seem to be able to put the dinner together well, or dad doesn't seem to be changing his clothes. Holidays are not the best time to have that talk with the parents, but make note of it, talk with siblings, see if you can schedule something at a time when everybody can gather and things are relatively calm, and you know, start to have a conversation. having the conversation, don't panic, just start talking, and listen. Find out what your parents' needs, wants, desires are. Don't gang up on them. Talk openly, talk respectively. Respectfully, they are still your parents and want to know that they are heard and they're respected. Figure out what's needed now. Be realistic. If it's not a crisis mode, we may be able to start with something pretty simple. Do they need transportation to the doctors? Do they need to have some meals prepared in the home or brought in by family or provided by a Meals on Wheels? Something that is not as threatening but can really help them in their current situation. Set priorities. Things that their safety. Safety is really paramount. Get rid of those throw rugs. I tell people I am not the nursing home police, but I am the throw rug police. I've seen more people who have fallen, broken hips, or ended up in a nursing home because of the throw rugs. So always get as many out of those as the house as you can. Do they need some physical therapy? Is their balance not as good as it used to be? Bring in some physical therapy, and that is most times paid for by Medicare, and that can help them remain safe in the home. Set priorities. What is really needed right now? Don't give them a whole laundry list of everything you'd like to see. Set priorities. You can only introduce so many services at one time. And plan for the future. Plant seeds. You may want to talk about senior living communities. Many older adults, when you talk about a senior living community, retirement community, they think nursing home. They don't understand that there are some beautiful communities out there that are like resorts or like a lovely hotel. So you might want to start talking about what's in the area, start talking about where they'd like to age in place, if not at home. Do they want, is there a thought about them moving out closer to adult children? Just kind of do the what ifs with them. And ultimately focus on their independence balanced with safety. Help them to hang on to the abilities that they can do, things that they can do safely. And the goal, again, is to keep them as safe as possible in their own home. So sometimes when you try to have that conversation, here's the reaction. They want to talk about something pleasant. Many times it's hard to look at the future and your own mortality. So you may have to kind of come around a couple times very gently to sit down and actually have the conversation. But what happens when they don't listen? I think it's important to really be realistic about what are the risks. Your concerns may not be the realistic concerns. So focus on their needs, not just your needs. Listen to their views. Don't assume that you know better. Again, listen, listen, listen. That's part of that respect for your parents. What do they want? What do they need? What do they desire? How do they envision their future? Discuss the pros and cons. I mean, we talk about throw rugs. You talk about the throw rugs keeping the carpet nice, but the con is that they may fall and break a hip. So giving them choices is really important. Explore the options. Talk about aging in place at home. What are they going to need looking forward to keep that home safe for them to be independent? Talk to them, again, talk about different senior living options. Be clear about your limits. Don't be guilted or pressured into providing more than you can provide. Be knowledgeable what can be brought into the home because you certainly don't want to burn out. Let's say they need a caregiver to come into the home to do some laundry, some light housekeeping, to prepare some meals, and they get some resistance there. Say, let's give it a try. Try it for a couple weeks. If you don't like it, we can just cancel it, and you don't have to have that service. Sometimes, something that's new and something they've never tried before, if you give it a trial period, they may find that it's extremely helpful and will continue long term. Sometimes when they're not listening at all, hire an intermediary, someone who can have an objective assessment, a social worker, a geriatric care manager, or an elder care coordinator. And I often tell families, I can go in and with an objective eye, and I can gently recommend things, and the families go, well, I told them they needed to have someone come in and prepare meals. Why are they listening to you? And It's sometimes because I'm not as close. I'm not a family member, and families have planted the seeds, and I just am the one that comes in and gets the yes from the older adults. And ultimately, you know, look at, sometimes you just got to back off and just wait. If your parent's competent, if they have capacity, the unfortunate reality is that they have the right to make bad decisions. And unfortunately, families really have the task of coming in when things go south, of picking up the pieces and putting things together. So, you know, plan, talk, try to put some things in place in advance. And that just takes a lot of conversation, a lot of listening. So I want to talk a little bit about community resources. There are, in your community, there are a lot of resources that are available, which are wonderful. The first place I would suggest that you go to, and this is throughout the country, every county is mandated through the Older Americans Act to have an office on aging. And you can go online, get information. You actually go to that county office on aging, and they're very helpful. They can give you information on all this list here. They can give you sources of private duty home health care. They can give you resources on personal emergency response systems. These are the pendants or wrist items that are the help, I've fallen, I can't get up. If you have an elder who's at home alone, I almost always recommend this, just as a important piece, because even if they don't have any medical or severe medical condition, someone living home alone, this can come in handy, especially if they've fallen and they can't get up or they can't get to the phone. And as I tell elders, this is like insurance. If you never have to use it, hallelujah. But if you do, it's there to make sure that you get help when you need it. Medication reminder systems, anything from a simple, what I call a MediSet, where it's like a plastic container that has a little compartments for the medications. The average elder takes anywhere from 8 to 15 medications a day. So it's important to have them sorted out so they know what to take in the morning, at noon, at night. They're also automatic medication dispensers, a bit more pricey, but those can be helpful in that they automatically dispense medications, typically filled by the family, and they notify the elder when it's time to take the medication. And they also can send notices to the family members remotely as to whether it's been taken or the medication's been taken or not. Home delivered meals, such as Meals on Wheels, there are also personal chefs that will come into the home. Home safety evaluation, really important. You can have that done through a Medicare certified home care agency, a physical therapist, occupational therapist that can really make sure the adequate grab bars are in there and access to bathrooms, things that you don't think about that can be a safety hazard. Home modifications. There are many companies out there that will do ramp installations or widened doorways or bathroom remodeling. You can rent ramps. So if somebody is wheelchair bound, either temporarily or long term, you can do that. In-home medical professionals. There are a lot of medical professionals that will come into the home. Primary care physicians, nurse practitioners, podiatrists. I know of ophthalmologists that come into the home. There are dentists that will come into the home. Typically specialists will not, your cardiologists, your rheumatologists, they don't come into the home, but there are many that will. And Medicare will pay for their services. Transportation, door-to-door transportation. Your counties usually have a paratransit transportation. There's also, you can also hire private duty home health aides who drive and will provide transportation. There's also something here in New Jersey, it may be similar in other states, called Ride for Life, where actually it's a department that will do Uber and Lyft, and the elder does not have to have a smartphone. They just call this central scheduling agency and have a credit card on file. So Uber and Lyft are now serving seniors. Adult daycare. This is usually from about 9 to 2. There's medical and social daycare where an elder who's frail or has memory impairment and lives with an adult child or has a family caregiver like a spouse, they can go there for 5 hours a day get that socialization, get the care that they need, and that gives that caregiver some respite, gives them a break. And it can be 1 day a week, 5 or 6 days a week, depending on what is needed. Legal services, very, very important to contact or work with an elder attorney who can make sure that the right documents are in place, the powers of attorney, the will, but also do some advanced planning in terms of long-term care services. And if Medicaid's on the horizon, it's very important to consult with a local elder attorney who knows the state rules and regulations. Caregiver support groups abound for caregivers of someone with memory impairment or caregivers of someone with Parkinson's disease. That is so important to prevent that caregiver burnout. And then you have caregiver respite programs. These are programs here in New Jersey. They're programs that are funded by the state that give the caregiver respite. Either it's, the adult daycare, so they get a few hours a day, or if they're needing to go on vacation to get some days away, where they will provide some respite in an assisted living residence. It varies from state to state, so check with your local office on aging. Important to talk, I'm going to talk periodically here about who pays. In terms of pays for programming or services, townships have transportation programs. Counties, your Office on Aging, they can talk about the Title III Homemaker Home Health Aid Program. States, here in New Jersey, we have the Pharmaceutical Assistance Program that helps offset the cost of medications. The Jersey Assistance for Care, which is an intermediary between private pay and Medicaid. So again, check with your Office on Aging. Find out what your state, your county, your town, your state provides. Federal government provides a Medicaid program, which is a combination of a state and federal program. Veterans programs, a lot of people don't know about these. The VA provides services to veterans for their medical care, and they do provide home health care in the home if you qualify. There's also the VA Aid and Attendance Program, where you can get cash benefits monthly to help offset the cost of in-home or assisted living care. But again, I would check with your Veterans Services Officer. Usually you have one, every county has one. And if you don't know about the VA programs, they will provide that information for you. Long-term care insurance, if you have it, and it's a relatively new policy, they're usually pretty flexible and will provide for, to the limits of the policy, in-home care, assisted living care, and nursing home care. And then private payment, that we're talking about assets, liquid assets, non-liquid assets, such as your home, where some people take out a reverse mortgage, some people take out a home equity line of credit, and there's also something called life settlements, life insurance conversions. Sometimes people have done that to get cash to pay for care in the home. I want to talk about just kind of an example of long-term care planning examples. Talking about some clients that I've had, got George and Mary, both in their mid-80s, both with moderate stages of dementia. George was living at home with his son, and Mary was living at home alone, getting a little bit of home health aid care. Mary's son was actually lived in Guam, and he was the only child. So I was working with both of them as a geriatric care manager. George was cash rich due to a long-term care insurance policy. Didn't have a home that he could liquidate, but there was a good benefit. So we were able to take his income and his long-term care insurance and working with the family, get an appropriate admission to a freestanding memory care assisted living community. Mary, on the other hand, was cash poor. She had a very small Social Security payment, no pension, no long-term care insurance, and she eloped from home one day, no ID. Luckily, she did not come to harm, and we ended up having to go from a hospital placement in the ER to a nursing home placement. So you should see the difference between people, George, who had done some planning, had some means, and Mary, who did not. Here's my own personal experience, non-planning versus planning. On the left-hand side was my grandmother. Lillian Gertrude, good old-fashioned name. She died at age 92. She was what I call the delightfully demented. She was a sweetheart. She had dementia. She lived in Maine her whole life. You can see Paris, Maine up there. And she developed dementia in her late 80s. And my father, Walter, on the right there, he and I brought her down from Maine, and because she had about $20,000, and that was about it. We got her the very best nursing home placement we could get for her, and then my dad and I were advocates for her till she passed away at 92. On the right-hand side, my father, Walter, said to me, Nan, I'm never going to do this to you. It was very hard, caring for Lillian, and I'm going to make some decisions early on, which he and my mother did at age 76. And they actually went into a continuing care retirement community here in the area, in Medford-Lees. Went into independent living, and I attribute that to much of his successful aging. That's him on his 90th birthday. And he's living independently. My mom passed away, sadly, but he remarried. And I say, Dad, every day, I said, you're living the life. And I'm very, very fortunate to still have him in my life. But here's another personal example of non-planning versus planning. That pre-planning is so very important. Most elders want to age in place. Most people, if you ask them, they want to age in place. Actually, the homeowners, those age 65 and 75, are growing faster in terms of single home owners. And about 88% of, if you asked anybody 65 and over, they say, I want to age in place in my home. Actually, it's now called aging in community. That's the new term for it. So that's the goal. Everybody wants to age in place. And that's what I do as a care coordinator, is to really try to make that happen. But sometimes, because safety or finances or whatever is an issue, we need to look at other options. So let's talk about long-term care options. And when we talk about long-term care options, we're talking about assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living. These are things such as walking, such as toileting, such as transferring from bed to wheelchair, those very basic activities, personal care, grooming, showering. So an option is to age in place with services, age in place in home. Here, and I'm going to talk about some costs which really are related to the South Jersey area. If you're in the Midwest or in the South, your costs are going to be probably substantially lower, so you're going to have to look at those costs. But this gives you kind of an idea of the difference, percentage difference between each level of care. Costs probably going to be higher in the Washington, D.C. area or on the West Coast. So if you're at home and you require that in-home care, which involves personal care, you're looking at $20 to $25 an hour, and it's going to go higher on weekends and holidays most of the time. Live-ins, which is a home health aide that lives in the home and provides care pretty much 7 days a week. They do need to sleep at night. That's averaging about $240 a day here in southern New Jersey. Living with adult children, again, there may not be a cost of the caregiving, but that caregiver is going to need respite care. So if you're having a home health aide come in, the costs above that do apply. Adult daycare, unless there's a grant from your state or county, is about $85 to $115 a day. And then you have your PACE programs. Those are nationwide. They're called Programs of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. They've been around a while. And this is a full-day program that provides all the medical services, support services, respite services. To be eligible for that, you have to have Medicare and Medicaid, and you have to have a caregiver at home that can provide care at night. But that's a wonderful program. And it's important to have that strong social support. People want to age in place at home, but sometimes they don't consider that socialization is every bit as important as medical care and as the personal care. I worked with Anne, who is now 93. When I first met Anne about 5 years ago, she was independent, still driving, and she had never married, no children, strong social community, a lot of friends. And she said, I want to figure out whether I'm going to a CCRC or I'm going to stay home. And so we did the Ben Franklin list, and she ultimately decided to stay home, and I was working with her as a care manager. And she had some pretty severe medical conditions, but she had that strong social support, and I attribute that to how well she did in the home and being happy with accepting more and more care because she had those dear, dear friends. Assisted living, I call it a cruise ship on land. This is apartment-style housing that provides congregate dining in a dining room with supportive assisted living services with a combination of on-site and on-call medical care, i.e. a nurse. Average length of stay in assisted living is 22 months. And two of the top 10 most expensive states for assisted living are Washington, D.C. and, surprise, surprise, New Jersey. Other long-term care options, the costs. Assisted living residents run here in southern New Jersey anywhere from $5,500 a month to about $7,000 a month, and that translates to $66,000 to $84,000 annually. Now, if you're looking at that $5,500, it could be as low as $5,000. You're looking at basic services. You're not looking at high-level care needs. So the more care you need, the more expensive it's going to get as time goes on. Assisted living memory care residents runs anywhere from $7,500 to $9,500 a month. They have higher staffing levels, higher care needs, and that's anywhere from $90,000 to $102,000 annually. And the assisted living level of care is provided in different settings. In a continuing care retirement community, which is the full continuum from independent, assisted memory care, subacute, skilled, to long-term care, skilled care. And now there's actually a new name for CCRCs. It's called a life plan community. So you're going to be hearing that term more and more. Partial continuing care retirement communities are those that have independent living and assisted memory care. And standalone is where you have your standalone memory care neighborhood. So you're going to see in a lot of different settings how this is provided. Skilled nursing, it's 24-hour medical care and assistance with activities of daily living. Remember I mentioned those things such as walking, toileting, showering, getting in and out of bed. Average length of stay is more than 2 years, and 2/3 of older adults can't afford to live in a nursing home for 1 year, and I'll show you why. Very, very expensive, and we're talking long-term custodial care. We're not talking subacute rehab care, which is short-term and usually paid for by Medicare, but this is long-term, and in southern New Jersey can range anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a month. We're looking at $120,000 to $180,000 annually. In fact, I was talking to a client's family the other day who was in a long-term care ventilator nursing facility, and that cost was $1,200 a day. I almost fell out of my chair. That was a new one on me. Skilled nursing long-term can be provided in different settings. You have hospitals with long-term acute care hospital, pretty rare, but they do exist. Continuing care retirement communities, partial continuing care retirement communities, those are ones that have assisted living and skilled nursing, standalone skilled nursing facilities, and greenhouses. And I'll talk a little bit about that now. You may have them in your state, they're national. Not that many around. This was Dr. Bill Thomas's vision. He actually started the Eden Alternative, which was humanizing nursing home care and how care was provided. The first greenhouse was built in Tupelo, Mississippi in 2003. And actually there are about 170 greenhouses in 27 states. And I'll show you a picture here in a minute. In New Jersey, we have the greenhouse living at Green Hill and West Orange, which is North Jersey, and here closest to us in South Jersey are Morris Hall Meadows, and those have been there probably for about 2 years. And his concept, Bill Thomas's concept, was to provide literally a home-like environment. It looks like a rancher, doesn't it? Has a front doorbell, you enter by the front door. In the communal living space, you have a living room and a country kitchen. Every resident has their own bedroom and their own bathroom. And when they're newly built, typically it's private pay. It's quite expensive. It usually runs around what a nursing home would cost. But it is a nursing home level of care if needed. But as these homes mature, they do accept Medicaid. So if that's an option in the state in which you live, I certainly would look into it because it's been highly successful and is probably as close to home-like care as you're going to get. Continuing care retirement communities, as I said, it's part independent living, part assisted living, part skilled nursing care. It's a tiered approach to the aging process, which the residents do age in place there. They can go from independent to any level of care. If it's short term, they can go back to independent level. Typically, they're all on one campus. The levels of care may be interconnected or they may be separate buildings on a campus. Many continuing care retirement communities require a large entrance fee of $100,000. That $1 million you're probably going to see more likely in California. And what that is a prepayment of future medical care, meaning that if you have a life care contract, a type A contract, you are prepaying your medical so that whether you're in independent living, assisted living, or assisted living memory care or skilled nursing, your monthly fee is going to remain relatively the same. There are typically, monthly fees depend upon the size of your residence, whether it's apartment, a cottage, a villa. There are typically 3 types of contracts. As I mentioned, the life care contract at type A is where you pay that large upfront entrance fee, which prepays your medical. Typically, they are not refundable. They amortize down after about 3 years. And then you are there. So you need to make sure that this is where you're going to age in place. A modified type B contract is one in which you pay a lesser entrance fee, typically large, but there usually is some kind of refundability to it. And I've seen them anywhere from 100% to 90% to 50%. And these contract types are changing as time goes on with different communities coming online. And your fee for service is a type C contract, which is your standard rental contract. And that usually has a very low community fee. Here in New Jersey, we see it anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000, and that is not refundable. So again, it's important to understand when you're entering into a continuing care retirement community, what is the contract and what does that entail, what does that provide by the community. So here's a summary of long-term care options. Again, aging in place with services, you have that home care cost, whether it's hourly or live-in, living with adult children. Again, the cost of the respite care. And also, I talk to adult children who are saying, we're building a mother-in-law suite on, or I'm taking mom to live with me. I talk about not just the financial cost, but the emotional cost to the adult children. Because as lovely as your parents can be, this can be challenging, especially as they age and their needs increase. Assisted living, again, is that $66,000 to $84,000 annually. Assisted living memory care is significantly more costly, $90,000 to $102,000 annually, and then skilled nursing being the most expensive, $120,000 to $180,000. Again, here in South Jersey. So, who pays for long-term care? That's always the question that we get asked. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. It pays for care, short-term skilled care only. It will pay for care in a subacute rehab facility. We're talking days to weeks. Your benefit period's about 100 days. The first 20 are paid at 100%. But as I tell families, that 100 days is not guaranteed. It's available, but it's dependent upon is that elder making progress, or what are the diagnoses, what are the goals. So it's really up to the physical therapist, occupational therapists who are providing the care to determine whether additional days are needed. Short-term home care, again, Medicare pays for that after a hospital stay or after a stay in rehab, or if the elder at home has a change in their medical condition. And that determines whether it's under Part A or Part B. But again, that's days to weeks. That is not long-term. I mentioned the VA aid and attendance, which is available to veterans and spouses of veterans. Again, that's a monthly dollar benefit, but it's, again, a limited dollar benefit, and it also has an asset and income requirement, and it cannot pay for around-the-clock care. There just aren't the dollars to pay for that, because around-the-clock care in the home is very expensive. I'd mentioned the Jersey Assistance for Community Caregiving. Again, this is in New Jersey. It's a state program for low-income individuals who are not eligible yet for Medicaid. The state caregiver respite program, and a lot of states do have this caregiver respite program. Again, it's for short-term relief for that family caregiver. And then Medicaid, it's really a poverty program. It's a combination of a federal state program for the poor and disabled. Here in New Jersey, we call it MLTSS, Managed Long-Term Services and Supports. Here in New Jersey, there are a number of states that do the Medicaid, the state portion, does allow for payment in the home or in assisted living. There are some states that do not do that. Pennsylvania, my understanding is that Pennsylvania does not provide for Medicaid services in the home or in assisted living, only in a nursing home. But still, under this MLTSS, there are limited hours of care in the home by a home health aide. I've seen a maximum up to 35 hours a week. In terms of assisted living residents, the waiver program, most assisted living residences will require that the elder pay privately for 2 to 3 years before the residents will accept Medicaid. And then they won't get, most of them will not guarantee that they will have a Medicaid bed available even after that elder has paid privately for the required period of time. And skilled nursing facility, Medicaid, again, will pay for 24-hour care. But again, there are some nursing homes, for example, in a life care, a CCRC life care community that don't take Medicaid, and other nursing care facilities that require a private pay requirement before they'll accept Medicaid. So it's important to understand who takes what and when. Out-of-pocket private payment by individuals, the elder, family, or friends, and long-term care insurance. There are a limited number of people who who have long-term care insurance, and you have to get that before you have the medical disability or the care need, before the horse is out of the barn. So more and more people are buying long-term care insurance, but again, sometimes it can be an expensive proposition. So the numbers are limited, at least at this point. So one more question that I pose to people, I say, okay, it's great if you have the resources to pay for care, and you've decided that you're going to age in place at home, or you're going to have care at a senior living community. But the crisis that really we're facing in the United States is that we're eventually going to have fewer and fewer caregivers. Today, there are about 7 caregivers for each person 85 and over. By 2030, there will be about 4 caregivers, as the boomers were reaching 80. In 2050, there will be 3 caregivers as Generation X hits 80. So between now and 2030, we're going to need about 2.5 million more long-term care workers. And the greatest need are for home health aides, certified home health aides. And that is typically been a profession that is very low paid. There's a high turnover. So we're reaching a caregiver crisis here. I don't know what the answers are. I don't have any easy answers here, but it's going to be important to get quality caregivers for our older population. And I just want to I'm going to backtrack a little here. And also 80% of caregiving is provided by families. And this caregiving is largely unpaid. So we need, families give up a lot to care for their elders. Many times they have lost wages, lost pensions, lost Social Security amounts, and then the risk for health issues, stress, depression are very high. So that caregiver respite is really, really important. So I'm going to talk about some other models of senior living real quickly. You see many of these smart living communities. They are mixed-use communities. This one is the Stories in Rockville, Maryland. It's a community for adults, different ages. It's intergenerational. Rental apartments, all the rental apartments have a universal design. Universal design is one step up from ADA, where it's wheelchair access, it's easy use, and you know, steps. So that's really important when you're looking at any kind of independent living setting. There's retail integration on the first floor, shopping, rail transport nearby, and they have lifestyle ambassador. They're called different things. It's basically a concierge that can arrange for transportation or for in-home services. And these communities have lots of technology. Ordering services using smartphones, tablets, computers. That telemedicine is becoming more and more popular. Smart thermostats. You're going to see technology really being a boom in these communities. Granny flats. This is actually a technical term. They're accessory dwelling units. Granny flats actually started on the West Coast. Their origin was called a dowager house. This is where a widow of a former heir of an estate would get older. She would move to the smaller cottage or dwelling on the property, and the younger generation would take over the house with the promise that they would care for that parent. Granny flat is usually physically attached to the main house, i.e. an in-law suite or a wing of the house, but it is multi-generational housing. On the West Coast and in Midwest, it's governed by zoning laws, building restrictions, occupancy regulations. You see the most of them, and they can come prefab, as you can see there, by the Granny Flat Company in Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon, Denver. Here in New Jersey, we don't really have any, because of our zoning laws and building restrictions, occupancy regulations. We're highly regulated. So unless it's an in-law suite, you're not going to see a granny flat here. Talking about the future for the boomers, that is called co-housing. That is a term that you'll see when you do a search on the internet. And it's sort of like a commune, not really, but sort of. It's a community where relationships are paramount. It builds sustainability. Many of these are environmentally friendly in their structure, in their shared resources, and they have a sustainable approach. It's enhancing for all generations. Caring for elders, there's conversation, meals, communal gatherings. It's almost going back to when families, multi-generations used to live together and care for each other. It's kind of how that looks. Bridge Meadows in Portland, Oregon is a whole family approach. They typically have 3 generations at one time. They actually have taken the approach where they have foster youth who live with the foster families there. The elders who move in are usually of modest means, and they provide 8 hours of service every week, the younger elders. And in return, they receive reduced rents. They act as surrogate grandparents. They may teach classes to the children. They may provide babysitting. They may prepare a communal meal. But again, it provides connection and purpose, that socialization I talked about earlier, for elders, which is so very important. Here's another one called Pioneer Co-Housing Community in Amherst, Massachusetts. These are actually separate houses in the same neighborhood, but they all gather in the communal house for meals and for socialization. And you can see there are multiple generations. So I always ask individuals, what do you think the future of aging will be? My husband and I do a lot of lecturing nationally, so we always keep our ear to the ground about who's doing what in other parts of the country. And that's the beauty of sharing those ideas as to what's going to work for people as they age in the coming years. Here's our contact information. Fendrick and Morgan is located in southern New Jersey. And with that, I'm going to turn back to Rachel and any questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nancy. we'll take a look. It doesn't look like we've received any questions, but if any of you all listening do have those questions, now would be the time to answer. You can just type them out in the bar on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll give it a few minutes. But this is a schedule of the next webinars in our series. So in July, we have housing options for an aging population. In August, we have healthcare costs in retirement. And in September, we have recognizing and preventing elder abuse. So it doesn't look like we're going to get any questions, but again, everyone should have Nancy's. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Differences in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts
What can you
versus
say
New
about the
Jersey?
differences in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts versus New Jersey?
Okay, well, I'm probably more familiar with Pennsylvania in terms of options that are offered over there. Actually, Pennsylvania had the first, put online the first continuing care retirement community in the nation. So there are a lot of continuing care retirement communities there, a lot of options in different settings. They don't have assisted living there. Their licensure is called personal care. So you're not going to hear it so much, personal care homes. You're not going to hear the term assisted living, although you may see it in their marketing materials. And as I said, they do not, Medicaid in medical assistance, as it's called in Pennsylvania, is not provided in the home or in assisted living, only in nursing homes. Massachusetts, I'm not quite as familiar with. Again, Medicaid is a state and federal program, so you will see that in Massachusetts. I would again suggest that you go to your county office on aging and get all that information on the state and local programs. So that's pretty much what I know about Massachusetts, other than they have harsher winters than we do down here.
I'm just asking Nancy for your full name.
My full name?
Yes.
It's Nancy Carman, C-A-R-M-A-N.
All right, well, that looks like it's it. So thank you all for joining us today. And we will be sending these slides out to the attendees afterwards, as well as a recording. Thank you very much.